Hello again, everyone. You're joining us for a special episode of Executive Platform's Blueprint podcast series. It's another speaker roundtable. We are in Tampa, Florida at the North American Finance Executive Summit, and it's my privilege to moderate this panel discussion about some of the challenges finance leaders are facing. Just before we get too far into things, why don't we start off by going around the table and introducing ourselves?
Yeah, thank you. My name is Elmar Licharz. I'm the CFO of North America for Volkswagen, and actually Volkswagen has a lot of different brands like Bugatti, Bentley, Audi, Lamborghini, and obviously VW. I'm happy to be here. I'm in the role now 6 years, and I was sent from the headquarters, and at some point of time I will also go back to Germany and look for another role, but I really love it here, and happy to be here and happy to share my thoughts.
Wonderful, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me on the roundtable. My name is Guru Ramamurthy. I work for a company called Bayer. It's a life sciences company. We have been around for over 160 years. And one of the things that inspires me most to work for Bayer is the mission that we have, which is health for all and hunger for none. We are at the forefront of nutrition, health, and access to quality healthcare. That's what we really do. And I currently serve as the CFO for the Bayer US business, which is roughly $15 billion in revenues. We are spread across 150 locations in the US, and we have 18,000 employees. So pleasure to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Okay, so very happy to be here. I'm Tatiana Simonelli. I'm a corporate CFO of Alfasigma. Many people might not have heard of Alfasigma, but it's a mid-size Italian pharmaceutical company, roughly 2 billion of revenues, clearly not more than 100 years of history as your company, 75 years of history. I joined Alfasigma last year to support them in their growth journey. The company wants to triple the revenue size. Before that, I spent 15 years in Bristol Myers Squibb and then 14 years in Procter & Gamble. Looking forward to be here to share my thoughts and to learn from the others.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I should have mentioned in my introduction, all of you have very generously agreed to speak at the event, which is how I came to bring you to this panel. And I'm really looking forward to having our speakers actually get a chance to speak to one another. Why don't we start off with the topic of talent attraction, talent development, talent retention, talent management. In the space of finance executives, I can see that all three of you have had long and storied careers, and things have changed over the course of your career in terms of how people are attracted to jobs, how companies recruit, how companies decide who they want to invest in and train up and develop as maybe the leaders of tomorrow. And then as that development is happening, how are you holding on to the talent that you need? How are you maybe helping the industry develop and a rising tide lifts all boats? No one really listens to this thing to hear me ask the question, but I will put it to you. As finance leaders, let's talk about talent. What are your organizations doing? What are some of your thoughts in the space? Why don't we start with you?
It's a super important question because we can talk about systems and processes and everything, but everything is done by people at the end. We always need to ensure that we have people with the right skills, but more importantly, or equally important, with the right motivation. The needs of the company might change over time. So as such, also the need for specific skills might change over time. And instead of permanently acquiring those skills from outside, there is no better way to get them as to develop internally. I know that you have very, very long career journeys within your respective companies. I also have 15 years in 2 companies. But now what I see currently in Alfasigma, we hire a lot externally for current needs. Now we need to go to one level up and to create interesting development plans for those individuals for next year, next 3 years, and next 5 years. That would match their development ambitions, but then also the evolving company needs. In order to make it happen, there should be, in my mind, very, very transparent dialogue. The company needs to know where they want to go, but individuals should not also feel pressed to say yes to this role now. Because saying maybe not now, I would like to explore something different, it's a perfectly acceptable answer. What do you think?
No, first I think you're 100% right. You want to keep your talent, you want to retain your talent, you want the things you learned and the culture of your company to have the idea that the future leaders are developed by yourself. So for me, it's important, do we have a career path within your company? So talents they are smart, they understand, maybe the current role is motivating them, but what is the next role? What is the opportunities the company has to offer? So it's more than the current role. It's really giving them a chance to develop themselves. The issue with talent management, I see it's a little bit like it's going up and it's going down. Like, you have a crisis. Nobody talks about talent management. Everybody wants to reduce costs. So we are there. In COVID, everybody tried to keep the people, keep everybody engaged. And I think it's a little bit on the companies to have more a steady current discussion and interaction, and that it's not like, okay, now we have good times, let's look for talents, and if we have bad times and we have to optimize cost, nobody speaks about it. I think that's a challenge we face right now.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Elmar and Tatiana. So I'll just build on what I heard here. I would say that people are at the center of everything we do. That is true for the finance function as much as it is true for the rest of the company. And one of the things that we have to keep in mind, in my view, when we look at finance talent, is also the emergence of new dimensions to the role, right? So there is a transition in these roles, in how finance is evolving as a function over time. There's a lot of technology that is hitting us from all sides. In most cases, I'd like to think of it as an opportunity more than a challenge, but it's still, you need the right sort of, digitally minded or digitally skilled workforce as well. So I think we are heading to a time where we are even reimagining many of the finance roles, and they're not the same roles as they were maybe 20 years back. So, identifying and also upskilling, existing talent, I think is going to be, front and center of, what leaders have to offer to the workforce.
Excellent point. And I have one specific example on this that might help. So out of 30 years of my career, I spent at least 25 purely in finance. But I had one interest and deviation. When Bristol-Myers Squibb was establishing insights and analytics function, they were looking for somebody who could act as a bridge between commercial leaders and data scientists. And even if I was not a data scientist, they said, you know what? You know the business, you know how they're reasoning, you have finance background, we can quickly teach you how to speak with data scientists, but that would help us to advance the rigor in data-driven decision-making across all international markets. So for 3 years, I was building this function across all the countries outside of the US, had a lot of fun, had my first regional leading experience, but that made me much stronger as finance professional because I understood how to use data and analytics to support also finance decisions. So then when I came back to finance, I was actually advocating for many of my finance team members to do similar paths. And in some cases, many cases, finance skill set is much broader than in other functions. For example, we could not do the reverse. We could not put data scientists in pure finance roles because you need to have accounting, analytics, controls, and business acumen background that others didn't necessarily have. But it worked the other way. To go to another function, have the broadened role, and eventually come back as much stronger finance professional.
Yeah, well, I agree. Great point. I don't know how you see that. Maybe I just want to build on something that you said, Elmar, earlier, and maybe ask you follow up on that. I mean, you talked about the importance of culture and maintaining sort of focus on talent development and management. And for me, it's in addition to the culture, it's also the sort of organization system we create, right? Things like empowerment and accountability and sort of how meaningful some of these finance roles are. So I think people in finance also feel that there is a pathway forward. You talked about career pathways. What's your view on what we may need to be doing differently going forward compared to how we have been managing in the past?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things which get more and more important. I mean, people feel a little bit threatened when AI comes and say we had the information summarizing business. So the question is, the people outside finance say, do we really need you? We automate everything, and then we ask AI, why do I need this to CFO to make this judgment call? Maybe somebody else does. So first, what I like to do in my own company is delegate not tasks, delegate really responsibilities to to grow people, to give them not only the chance to work on things, but they should also present. Try to give them end-to-end responsibility. I think that's really, really important, because it's the finance leadership starts very early on, not doing this accounting piece, but trying to do it end to end. It frees up my time. I want to do different things. If an accountant, a controller, a tax person does things end to end, also presenting, also when issues come, that's, I think, very, very important. Just to mention one piece of it.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because I think fundamentally, when you look at the role of the CFO and the finance teams, the function itself, it is evolving to becoming much more of a strategic partner, a thought partner, and even a transformational leader in the companies. And for that to happen, and for us to maintain the quality on the foundational elements of finance, I think a lot of what you're saying, which is getting experience from other functions, bringing it back into finance, and building out an even stronger function, I think is like front and center of not only building our talent, but also making it attractive for people to have careers.
Taking this concept to the extreme could be, have you heard of boomerangs? So people who actually leave the company, go outside, develop certain skill set, and come back. When I was in the big multinational companies, this was happening rarely, but now I'm in a mid-sized company and I see multiple examples. It's an interesting way to develop talent, right? From company perspective, it requires purposeful staying in touch when the person is outside, and being very clear upfront what skills can be developed and with what speed internally, because it's always a question of cost and speed, right? The effort how it can get to. Have you seen the boomerangs in your experience?
It's interesting. It's if you go to the headquarters in Germany, we are so big. Then people really hardly leave our company as a whole, but within the company they have a lot of the development opportunities. Being in the North American region, being not so big as a company, I think the career passes, we have some boomerangs. Also, I think the cultural difference, the Americans like to really do after 3 years something new. They feel they are stuck if you don't add to the job. Either you enrich it or you open up other opportunities. And I don't have an issue with people leaving my company, because I believe you always have to be as attractive as possible. And if somebody has a better attractive option, there's nothing bad about, some are then very, very tough on people leaving. But I think it's a normal process. You have to be attractive. You have to ensure, especially the key talent you want to keep in your company, talk to them regularly, open up opportunities, and no expectations. You can only fulfill expectations if you know them. And I see a lot of leaders who are not sure what their own staff wants to do. So this is something it's important to me. And I still believe somebody who is motivated and likes what they do, that the results are better. Hopefully that's true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I don't think I have seen a lot of boomerangs as an intentional strategy. I think they have sort of happened coincidentally, and they do bring good results when people gain different skill sets and come back, for sure. But I think this whole concept of fundamentally trying to develop talent, getting them to the next level. At Bayer, we are over the last I would say year and a half, we are intensively trying to reorganize ourselves in a new operating system. We call it dynamic shared ownership. And one of the key tenets of that system is something what we call dynamic talent flow. Right? So we are trying to sort of codify what you described, Elmar, a little bit, where people can continue to enrich themselves even within the same company, where the historical talent flow might have taken a long time, or might have hit hierarchies of barriers, or sort of organization structures. People are sort of allowed now to move a bit more, nimbly, more agile in our new system. And we are starting to see some early successes. There's much more sort of motivation and excitement in the workforce, because this is something new, and people don't have to wait for 3-4 years before they can move on. but they can do it at much more of a rapid scale. So no, we have great hope, and we anticipate great things to come out of this in the coming years.
Very, very interesting. But as you are saying, it should be done with an intention.
Yeah.
Clearly. So one of the examples that I saw, maybe not as much like extreme as Boomerang, is when the company outsources significant scope of activities, which in finance happens frequently for transactional services, the relationship with the service provider becomes very, very robust. So the company was actually sending some of high-profile finance talent for, let's say, 1.5 years, 2 years, we can call it secondment, we can call it on loan, to that service provider to run the operations. And that was very helpful, because if you don't have this scope within the company because it's fully outsourced, then you actually leverage the partnership to continue developing your talent. And the inverse was also valid. Clearly, it requires a certain degree of agreements between the companies.
It's an interesting field. I like the outsourcing, insourcing. What's your experience? What parts do you outsource? What parts do you insource? Because now moving from talent a little bit away, like how the finance value chain. I mean, it's pretty broad from tax to accounting. Normally, you have account shared service center. We have them. Some areas like payroll, which was pretty specific, we outsourced completely, not because we gained a lot of financial improvement, but simply we were not very good in handling it, and people hated to work there. So they were all constantly moving, and we lost a lot of knowledge. So we said, like, okay, let's source it out. What is your expectation? Which areas would you rather keep in-house? What do you see as very critical value-adding finance function, and where do you say, no, this can be done by a third party?
Yeah, maybe I'll offer my insight first, and then you can follow. I'd say this is I think this is a topic that is undergoing I would say a constant sort of change, and I think it's sort of an evolution. As you said rightly, when it started out many years back, it really was looking at sort of transactional type of topics. Let's say if you had accounts payable or order to cash type of transactional topics, those were the first ones to get outsourced or offshore. Just like you described, we also have our in-house shared service centers with a footprint across the globe. But we also have partnerships with specific vendors for specific topics to sort of take it to the next level, but all the time trying to redefine what the core activity should be in finance. So I wouldn't say that there is a perfect definition. I think it's more a concept in time that is constantly evolving. And now with the advancement of generative AI and technology, I think we are going to probably see the next round of iteration. And I actually firmly believe that even topics such as support for business partnering activities, analytics, in FP&A, even those types of activities, can be done external, as long as you have a partner who is co-located with the business or functional leader. So I think this is still, very much a fast-moving field in the market.
Yep. I've seen different examples for both of centralization and then ultimately outsourcing. Yes, usually it starts with transactional services, payables, receivables, like some balance sheet reconciliations. There can be some examples of tax operations, compliance work, some basic treasury. I've seen examples of when one company decided to centralize up to 40% of FP&A activities, all the management reporting as well as initial stages of forecasting. That clearly requires very careful planning, handoffs, making sure that people staying close to the business, they are rightly equipped. But then on the other side, whoever does the work in the center has the right business understanding. Because otherwise you centralize, you standardize the processes, but they don't produce value.
Yeah,
right.
I 100% agree.
And then the areas, add up the people who they put in the central, and then you ask yourself, have you really added any value?
Yeah, agreed. So I think I think you just hit upon the right point at the end, which is, I think for me the evolution is a lot of the initial impetus was around labor arbitrage. right? To take costs out in sort of high cost countries and play on the difference in compensation. I think it's starting to with technology now, starting to move to the next stage, which is it's got to be value addition. It can't simply be on labor arbitrage, simply because of the point where you start building up elsewhere, or you try to offset, or if you just arbitrage and put things in an offshore, the type of sort of dedicated focus back to the customer, that is offshoring it, that does not happen. So I think it's certainly evolving, but for me clearly, it has to be a value added construct. Otherwise, it's not going to be sustainable. To your point,
it's a good point. But we for example think, can we do high level analytics, with a dedicated AI team, and we are not sure. And I have to admit, my experience is if you are not so close to the customer, it's not easy to manage this interface, both on a content, on a value add side, and also on a cost side. You ask yourself, is this service really worth what you pay and what you invest? And for us, as finance people, I would like to do it more cross-functional. And we still have some functional barriers, where people like to hold on to their structure.
Oh, I'm so sorry. May I actually? So the next group that I wanted to get into, and I love this back and forth, by the way. I'm fascinated. But I do want to talk about data analytics, which I think is what you were about to launch into. And maybe we could just frame it a little bit with the idea that finance has always had data. It's flowed into you since the dawn of time, but we are now in the 21st century, and all of these tools run on data. And as you say, are we actually contributing value when we do it? Can we do it in a logical way? Can we talk about how your organizations and your philosophy looks at data, treats data, what you should be doing with it to help your businesses grow, to make sure that you've got the right talent rising up through your organizations, to develop the skill sets that you need? I would love to have a little bit more conversation that is focused around your approaches to data.
I can go first. I think what we have accomplished, I would say fairly successfully, is to ensure that in all the organizational units that we have, that the importance of data is fully understood. There is a clear definition of how data is viewed, and that we have built sort of structures around that. Because in order to take advantage of data, in order to analyze or manipulate it to generate insights and analysis that are meaningful, you need to be able to organize your data first, and then you need to be able to democratize it, right? So we have established a number of initiatives that have resulted in creation of what we call data lakes across the units, trying to harmonize master data behind it. So I think a lot of the brass tacks work have happened that puts us in a really good position now to extract value out of this data. I think the key question remains, which I think is still a work in progress in our company, which is how do you get to sort of streamlined insights in an end-to-end fashion across the company? Because data exists. Some of this is financial data, some of it is non-financial, some of it is external to the company, some of it is internal. So there is a great deal of moving parts here, and how you arrange everything in a way that you can generate insights, I think, is sort of the work that is still underway.
And how you arrange all of this clearly should help users get the answers to their questions.
Yep.
And this is actually, for me, the biggest question is how we teach the organization to ask right questions. Because if you think how we were producing reports even 10 years ago, the main focus was on data correctness and completeness, making sure that everything was squaring and everything was there. Now, the true insight comes from integration of different data sources. And today we saw in some sessions, you type a question and then the system produces you some kind of answer. It's not always possible in all the companies, but at the same time, creating possibility for users to dynamically navigate data sets can help them to experiment, ask questions, get the first level answer, dig deeper, and then so on and so forth, and then give feedback to the team who is helping to manage all that data, so that ultimately the organization as a general becomes more effective in using the data and creating appetite for further questions. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the ecosystem that feeds itself.
Yeah, it's. I mean, First, there's all kind of different kind of data. Like we have, for example, the internal data, the financial data. We have then all the customer data. So, if you drive a car, you're a customer. Obviously, we have to take care of customer privacy and so on, that the data is treated rightly, and we did a lot of work on that. We also, I think, the expectation of our industry, how to utilize data and make money with it, was very, very aggressive. And you figure out some of this is possible. For example, weather data through cars. You know exactly when it's raining, so the information is there. However, you figure out we lost a little bit the race against the apples of this world, because everybody has their mobile phone with them. So the car lost the device of getting this data, but we try to utilize a lot. Also, it's interesting when we use tools and combine them like AI with data. We wanted to understand how much incentives do I need to get to sell our cars. What is the average? At COVID we had a beautiful time. We could sell the cars without any discounts. Discounts are back in the market. Good news for the customer. So we said, like, this is such a big amount of money. Let's really optimize it. Let's collect all the data. Let's analyze. Let's try to gain insight out of it. And it was interesting because you see the limitations of data as well, because the COVID time was so different that the data was somewhat useless, because the projection was far too low. We are back into a pre-COVID world where we have an intense competition, and so discounts in the market. Yeah, just to give you one example.
Yeah.
If I can perhaps, sorry, go ahead.
No.
If I can perhaps add to that and connect it with the talent conversation that we had, I think for successfully continuing on the path of data analytics and generating insights and so on, I think it's also important to have a workforce that is digitally upskilled, right? So there's a lot of effort that needs to be put in order to raise the level, raise the bar in the organization. Make sure that people have workshops where they're engaging with this, not necessarily because they want to please the boss, but because it's intrinsically motivating for them to work on digital topics, because that's the way you get those type of interesting questions and help shape the future. I really believe that the faster technology moves, I think the more these types of futuristic solutions have to be sort of co-created with your workforce, with the team members, and it's not necessarily that the boss always has the answers in the room. So I think we are moving to a slightly different way of operating, in my view.
Just building on this point, because boss for sure doesn't always have the answer, and the best way is to have the right team building the solution. An example I can offer is that we are currently experimenting with first standard sales and P&L reports on Power BI standard for total company. I was shown a mock-up that had tons of data, and I said, I'm as a finance person, I know how to read the charts, but this is too much even for me. I don't, if you share it with a business unit lead or the country general manager, what would be the insights? And instead of giving comments to the team, like line by line, I said, let's do it differently. As a senior executive, these are the types of questions I would be asking when I start reviewing financials. Can you help me understand where I need to look at so that I get the answer, like first level, second level? And the most junior person in IT team and in my FP&A team, they actually produce the best solution. But it was this partnership of the senior leader thought process with the creativity and the knowledge of the tools by more junior people. I think at this point, maybe hierarchy at the end of the day will matter less and less.
I agree 100%. I think the job of a leader when it comes to these type of topics increasingly is becoming, you got to create the conditions for success and sort of get out of the way of the people. And let them come up with a solution. Right?
How do you do it? Do we do more projects, that you put people on projects, or did you rotate, or but 100% you also need to rotate people in your finance departments, because if you have this young great data analyst being able to use every Power BI and program any app, he gets killed within the department when everybody just uses Excel.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to respond? I have a theory, but
So so you might be surprised, but we don't have yet a structured solution. In my company now, there are so many areas that we need to fix from finance capability perspective. So we just we have a question, we create a small task force, put whatever we believe now is the right talent mix between internal and external, go for solution, then expand it, and then see what skills could be actually applicable in another project. If I was still in a big company where I was before and was answering this question, I would tell you that rotations are great. And mentoring sessions are great, like through the levels. In my previous company, we had not only top-down mentorship, but cross-generation mentorship between young people and the senior leaders. So that was very...
Who's learning more, the young one or the senior leader?
It was actually in both directions, exactly. Yeah. But I have teenage children, and I'm learning from them so much about technology, about other different things that we actually don't deal with regularly, but we must know in order to succeed. So it is this. It should be in both directions. But the point is that while I'm now experimenting with all of this, let's say by chance, because I have urgency to cover multiple areas, structured approach would actually position companies for much longer lasting success here.
Yeah. And maybe just building on that, at Bayer, maybe I'll try to capture it maybe in 2 or 3 elements of what we do. There's a lot of effort underway, first of all. In terms of what we call digital transformation. It's happening at multiple levels in the org. But I would say the 2 or 3 sort of key elements that has seen us make progress is, one, sort of having a grassroots approach to this on the one side, which is sort of digital upskilling, arranging hackathons, which are, self-organized by the people. So it's almost like a citizen-led initiative, if you will. You don't need to wait for somebody else to give you permission, type of thing where, people are educating themselves. And there are, as you said, if let's say, as an example, in the accounting team, if I have, say, 100 people here in the US, there will be like, 10 or 15 people that are digitally a bit more savvy and advanced compared to the rest. And they are the ones that take the initiative typically. But then you let them loose and sort of unleash them. The second thing is we are trying to build sort of capabilities for digital finance in different parts of the organization, and they are the ones that then supplement, when the use cases come up, to try and make them into some type of reality and show people what the possibilities are. And then the last thing, which is very important, is IT. They still have a big role to play, so they are partnering big time with the business. So there is a segment of the IT department that is actually focused a bit more on the business orientation, on trying to help us with use cases, creating AI use cases, actually, teaching us sometimes, what the possibilities are. So it's like, from different angles, it's a bit, I would say, imperfect, but, we are focusing on the principle of, say, progress over perfection in a way.
Maybe one of the ways to make it more structured and taking some insights from what you said is that we know that many organizations focus on continuous improvement, right? And in many big companies, there are global process owners who focus specifically on process excellence. If you add to process excellence in that scope also all the digital aspects and executing of that process, you would have somebody who consciously looking for opportunities to improve ways things are done. It's not necessarily should be done always by one individual. It can be a broader group so that you leverage different passions, different also digital skills. But that's the way maybe to build a little bit of structure around it.
Okay. One question to you personally. What do you do to keep up with the speed? I ask myself, the habits you have and the way, we humans tend to be lazy once we have a specific way of doing things. We don't challenge ourselves too often. I think change has to start with ourselves always to be a leader. Like, do you really look into the apps? Are you willing in your IT system to go beyond, or you just in our role for an IT support and get it handled? It's like how do you do it? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a great question because clearly we cannot lead organizations through change if we don't constantly evolve ourselves. one of the things that I started doing is like everybody wants to work with AI, right? So once I understood that there are different types of AI, some requiring a lot of data, and we've heard about it a lot. But there are some that I actually can work in isolation. So Microsoft Pilot is one of those. My IT leader said, "Do you want to try?" I said, "Okay, I want to try, but it's not only for me, right? I want my whole leadership team to try, and then we compare notes, tease each other, and see maybe we can use it in our meetings for eventual automated minutes and everything." And that was interesting. It forced me to watch through the video how I can use it, but then also allowed me, by asking questions, maybe understood how my team members were exploring it further. And my insights was, it's great for the bosses, but we need to democratize it because it can help much more our junior analysts. But that's just an example, because then you create the common language throughout the organization. And that's just, again, one example of Microsoft Pilot. What do you think?
No, I agree. I mean, Copilot is fantastic. We just feel it's still a bit more expensive. If you want to democratize it across 100,000 people company.
I had the same discussion.
I love Copilot. So we have a few people that have access to the license, and they're playing around with that, and we use it in meetings and stuff, and it's fantastic. But I mean, generally to your question, yes, spot on. It's one of those things where I think you have to always, continue to evolve as a person, as a leader. And, in a way, if you want to ask something of the organization and drive in a certain way, you also have a role model. So, I mean, the way a couple of things have helped me personally. One, I have tried to read up a lot to make myself familiar, because you can't really go to school and get taught about this. And then I attend a lot of workshops, forums like this, where there are experts that are coming in and talking and sort of opening your mind to the possibilities. And then I try to connect with people in the teams that are, much more advanced in sort of understanding of technology. And I actually learn from them. They might be my juniors or my peers. I have no problem learning from different levels. So I mean, that's the way I try to keep up. And then the last thing I'll say is that running a lot of pilots, I think would be the way to find out what could be different. Like the last example that I have recently, we tried to have a chatbot that we could use in the accounting function. That would be sort of an internal, call it help desk, for the different accountants, where they could put in their questions, within the realm of the Bayer accounting framework, and the bot would try to answer questions saying you could book this journal entry, or this could be a proposed accounting treatment. So something like that.
I would like to have a CFO bot when I'm on holiday, ask the bot, and then you come back and they say, "Oh, Emma, you are much more structured than before."
For sure.
Okay, so I want to do maybe one question that's sort of, it's specific, but it touches on everything we've done so far. And I'll confess, it's one of my favorite topics to do at these roundtables, because everybody's got an opinion. We're talking about forecasting and sales and operational planning. And I said this at one of our supply chain events, and someone said, well, the nice thing about a forecast is it's always wrong. And you were saying earlier, you did a forecast, and during COVID, things missed their targets. There is a sense that we need to rethink, we need to reinvent, we need to bring new tools into the conversation. And I know finance is having these conversations in every organization. For all of our listeners here, what are you doing to get better at forecasting, get better at sales and operational planning, get back to hitting the numbers that you need to hit, and actually building our place of trust, right? Predicting and knowing that is an actionable plan. What are your thoughts there?
Maybe I start on this one, because, being in the automotive industry, I have a clear view that the forecast is very important. But we have a behavioral issue on top. We have not a content issue that we don't know what's realistic. The topic is, in the automotive industry, if you want to make a new car, you have to promise, obviously, a lot of volume. Otherwise, with the economies of scale are high. So in order to have a good business case, you must be on the optimistic, aggressive side. And there's nothing bad about having an planning which is tough, but the issue is, if you have very, very optimistic business cases, at the end you fail, and you make wrong decisions in allocating your investments and so on. So we have to we have to think about tools who ensure that that our base planning is not too optimistic. And I think we are working on this. Also, I think about capital allocation based on the future. To some extent, you have to go a little bit back. What did you achieve this year, which makes you think that you can grow by, I would say, 5-10% is probably possible if you have business cases growing 30% in the car industry. There are some examples out there, but what makes you think that you are this specific example? So I think we need more tools, we need more data, and we have to get objectivity in this behavioral issue that everybody strives to fight for the resources. You know, if the Porsche business case is very, very attractive, obviously you get the volume, and we are in an internal competition. You know, who gets the financing? Yeah, it's very specific, obviously, this example. But how do you do your forecasting? Or
so you mentioned a very interesting aspect. It all depends on the purpose of forecast, which sometimes is, in my experience, is being misinterpreted, because there is a difference to do the forecast to make sure that you have the right product when customers are asking for it. Do the forecast as a basis for ultimately setting targets for the organization, or monitor performance. And I've seen organizations who were doing very frequent reforecasting as the way to monitor performance, which instead is a waste of energy of the whole organization. And moreover, if you do it bottom up, you pile up human bias through the whole chain. What I did in Alfasigma this year is that instead of quarterly bottom-up forecasts, we will do only one during the year, but we will leverage S&OP forecast in units converted at average prices in values as a directional indication where sales are trending at the overall level. So we've done the first 2 months of experiments, and it is actually working very well. We've discovered, though, that some regions are actually put in human buyers. Volume forecasts indicate upside, but for now they're keeping it in their pocket and say, no, something else will happen. And that's an opportunity. Those are the situations where you can lose investment opportunity, because if there is upside, you better know it upfront so that maybe you can invest either in the same region to get even more or in other regions. By removing human bias from the forecast and connecting different forecasts that are happening in the company, I believe we can fulfill all the needed objectives in a much more effective way.
Yeah, I think these are great points, and so I can supplement by saying that there are like two approaches to the question. When you look at S&OP planning, demand planning, and sort of the financial planning, I think we have come from many years of looking at these planning processes through a functional lens, right, versus moving to an enterprise view. And so what we have been able to achieve in the last several years is an enterprise view, to your point, on, let there be one plan, because at the end of the day, there is only one product that you sell to the customer, so you don't need like 5 different numbers on the same product. So, it's an enterprise view to the plan. And then to your point on the forecasting bias that often happens, be it optimistic or pessimistic, I think to a certain extent you can't really fully resolve it, right, as long as you have human judgment in play. But what we try to do is sort of supplement with predictive analytics and sort of use a technical approach to it. And so people have to then react to what the predictive numbers are saying. And so at the end of the day, we gather around, one plan through a discussion in the team with some judgment still involved from people.
I like the idea of predictive analytics. What I also did, I proactively said that obsolescence costs will be borne by commercial unit P&L, by the one that produces a S&OP forecast. And it's a kind of a stick saying that if you over forecast and then you don't sell, you actually pay consequences.
Yeah. So you try to fight the bias that the behavioral, there's an issue if there's both sides, either you are too bullish in order to get more resources, or you are lowballing in order to